Now, if you're entering numbers and dates into Excel, we know that it deals with these things quite happily. But there are occasions when you don't want Excel to play around with or reconfigure what you've typed in. For example, if we were to take our data entry sheet and on the Numbers tab, just type in a number with a leading 0, such as 0167. We press return and the leading 0 is removed because Excel thinks it's trying to be helpful. It becomes even more of a pain with some dates. If we want to type in a date, that's quite happily month / day, the year, and quite happily it converts that to a date, and we know it's dealing with it as a date as we are right aligned. Let's just widen column A so we can see any alignments that take place. Now, sometimes you might want to type a reference number that could be interpreted as a date. For example, if we went for 9-5-54, which is actually a reference number for a product, I enter that into an Excel cell, press return, and Excel converts that into a date for me, 9/5/1954. Well, that's not what I wanted to happen. So this problem of removing leading zeros, problem of converting what looks like a date into a date when it's not really a date, all need to be overcome. And there are really two ways of doing that. One is to simply type a single apostrophe when you enter the value. So I come down to A4, I type a single apostrophe, put my 0167, just as I tried in A1 before, and when I press return, I see that it's left aligned, hence it's being treated as text. The leading 0 is still there, that's the most important thing. I do get one of those little warning indicators, which if I click on, tells me that that number is being stored as text. Do I wish to convert it to a number? Do I wish to ignore the error? Well, I'd actually like to ignore the error because it's not an error, it's intentional. And I can do the same with a reference that might be a date. So a single apostrophe, 9-5-54, return, and that remains as I've typed it because of the single apostrophe. Again, you get the little warning which you can choose to ignore or tell it to ignore. But what you'll see is it tries to convert it to a date. Actually, ignore it. Stop trying to convert this to a date. That's method number one, the single apostrophe. Now you'll see in the cell that that's not visible, but if you actually click back onto edit, you can see the single apostrophe at the top, so you can see what you've done or what someone else has done to try and stop Excel from converting your reference to a date or for losing your leading zeros off of large numbers. Now the other option is to actually pre-format the cell as a text cell. If I move to A6, choose the quick formatting drop down and choose text, then I'm predefining that cell as a text cell so that when I then type in 0167 and return, it stays left aligned. I don't lose my leading 0. I do get the little warning symbol about it being treated as text, but what is missing is the single apostrophe up here. So people don't immediately see what you've done to leave it alone. We've actually pre-formatted the cell. You cannot post format, so I cannot type in 0167 and then tell it to be text because the 0 will have already been taken away by them. The same with the date, or in our case, the reference number. I have to pre-format that cell as text. So obviously you could do a whole sheet or a whole row or a whole column if you need it to be like that the whole way through. Then type in my reference number. We'll use the same number to prove it works. Return, and it doesn't get messed around with. It doesn't get reconfigured into a date. It gets left as a text value. So those are your two options. The single apostrophe, which you must physically type at the beginning of the line, or you pre-format the cell or number of cells as a text cell, and Excel then knows that it's not to change, manipulate, make any adjustments at all to what you've typed. And that's very useful for reference numbers not being changed into dates, and for numbers with leading zeros to not lose your leading zeros.